Thank you for coming to the Awake and Thriving podcast. Today we have with us Amber Fokken. She is the creator of Protea, ADO Fitness, ADO Bands, and the author of Hippie Eats, and she's a certified trainer. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, definitely. I've followed you for a while, and I would love for a lot of other people to follow you, to be honest, because you have such a wholesome family, and I know you there's a lot of stuff that you have to juggle, but you seem to do it really, really well, and you're really honest online, and you're genuine, and I love that about you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think being genuine is just, I hope that everybody can just be genuine with what they put out, because it just gets you further in life. You feel better about yourself. So I try to stay true to me with everything I put out there, and hope that people can relate, and those who don't, hopefully they just unfollow.
Yes.
So.
When you first started, did you start off, when you started into nutrition and fitness, did you start off so vulnerable? Or is that something that you just went into little by little?
I would say no, because I felt like I had to kind of uphold this fitness personality when I started on Instagram, because that was when I was in the peak of my bodybuilding days, and I felt like people followed me because they wanted to be inspired, but I also felt like I couldn't admit my faults. I couldn't talk about binge eating, because I couldn't possibly do that if I was a fitness professional, and so I think it took years of me going through a lot and realizing that I get a lot further allowing people to connect to me, at a more vulnerable level, than putting out more fake facade of being perfect. And once I realized that, it was easier to just be myself and just be real. And I realized I impacted a lot more people just doing that. And so it took a little while, but eventually, when I did make that shift, it was easier. I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, this is what you get.
Yes, that big release.
Right. Yeah.
Your fitness journey is really relatable to a lot of women that have been in competitions, especially when you were so transparent talking about what happens after competition sometimes. Your weight will totally, especially if you binge eat or you eat a lot, your weight will fluctuate a lot. And that's not something that was really spoken about before, or even documented at all.
Right. Yeah. And I think also because reverse dieting wasn't really a thing back in 2010, people were kind of just getting into extremes, and Instagram was all about extremes and competing, and nobody really talked about the aftermath. And so and even if they did, they didn't know what to do. So when they came out of a show and they did gain weight because they were eating a lot, they didn't really know how to get out of that, and I didn't either. And so it was one of those things that along the way, I felt like sharing that, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, finally somebody said it, because so many girls were struggling with the same thing, but nobody was talking about it, like you said. So I'm glad I decided to share that part of my life in that story, because I did feel like it was a relief to me just to be vulnerable and to be open about it. But also I felt like so many people were like, finally somebody I can relate to that's, not just perfect and living this easy, healthy life. And that wasn't at all what was going on in the background. So, yeah.
And then the way that you approach dieting and just lifestyle, how you eat, is so refreshing. I've worked with trainers in the past, as you probably know, that they would keep me at 40 carbs a day for competitions.
Yeah,
and
no.
40 carbs. Can you imagine just eating 40 carbs a day?
No.
And it was crazy. And when I would try to come off a competition, they would keep me on that diet.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to fluctuate.
Yes, exactly. It's impossible mentally and physically to sustain that. And that it's unfortunate there's still some trainers out there doing this, but hopefully, people, I would hate for anyone to have to go through that, because if you did and I did and multiple girls did, obviously it's happening. But that's also why I try to share that there's a better way, because I want those girls who are vulnerable, who are just getting into their fitness journey, to not fall into the hands of a coach that, gives them years of trouble down the road because of what they did. So yeah. I really try to preach, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that hard. Be smart about it. Find a coach who knows what they're doing. Talk to, prior clients after the show, not just when they look amazing, but where are they at 4 months later? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Do your research on the coach before you hire somebody, because it's easy to get somebody lean. It's easy to starve somebody. That is not hard. It is very hard to get somebody lean and keep them healthy. That is hard, and that does take strategic dieting. And that's something that I'm grateful I was able to learn and I'm able to offer now through my business and coaching. But it took me going through it to really learn how to do that and learn how to find a more sustainable approach.
Because you did that yourself, kind of walking yourself through that when that occurred, right?
Yeah, because I struggled big time. And, I was really heavily into fitness modeling, doing a lot of big magazines, and I had a lot of pressure on my back. And, it was like 4 years into it, I'm like, this is impossible. Like, I cannot sustain these extremes where it's like I'm 20 pounds heavier and then I have to get 20 pounds off and I'm killing myself. And I was like, there has to be a better way. It has to, like, there's got to be girls, people out there who do this more sustainably, more healthy. And so I set out to like figure it out and, heal myself from the inside. And along that journey, I learned so much. And that's really what like made me so passionate about internal health. And I was able to teach, my trainers that work for me exactly how I do things and, my beliefs and what I've learned along the way. And it kind of like was a trickle effect amongst all of us, because they've had their own experiences. A lot of my trainers have been through extreme preps themselves. And I think that just makes you a more passionate coach, because you don't want other people to experience that. So you want to show them that there is a better way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so are you vegan or vegetarian?
I'm not vegan. I think people tend to throw that word out there, and I personally feel like the vegan lifestyle goes far beyond just diet. It's, you're not using any animal leather or, honey or whatever it is. And I personally don't like to put that label on myself, because I do eat eggs. That's one thing I do eat that comes from an animal. And, on occasion I might use honey, or I don't eat any dairy, but I will, on a very rare occasion, I will eat an animal protein. It's, or a fish or something if I'm out at a restaurant. Like, I'm talking every few months, but I don't claim to be vegan because of that. I don't want that restraint on me. I don't want to put that out there, because the people who do live that lifestyle, like, I highly respect, because it's hard. Yeah. And I don't want to like put on a fake facade that that's what I'm doing, because it's not. I highly consider myself plant-based, so that's kind of how I define my diet. I'm not vegetarian, because vegetarians usually eat dairy, and I don't eat any dairy. That's one thing I don't touch. So, yeah.
Okay, now I can see why you're kind of in the middle. You're not really vegan, but you're not totally vegetarian.
Right. Yeah.
There's this whole list of new things that you can define yourself as.
Yeah, I mean, I really try to stay away from land animals. If I do eat meat, it's typically a seafood. But again, it's not very often at all. And then I do keep, right now, because I'm dieting for something and I have to hit a certain protein threshold, I do struggle a little bit with hitting that if I don't have eggs in my diet. So I will eat them more depending on my goals. So that's where I'm at. It's definitely its own diet, but I like that though. I don't think people should put constraints or labels on their diet, because I think it confuses things, and it makes your mind a little bit, I guess, too rigid, in my opinion, around like what you can and cannot have. So, and that's a whole other thing with like the ethical side of being vegan. If you're doing it like specifically ethically for the animals, that's kind of different. But if you're just making rules, I don't like rules.
You're all no, thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you think everyone would benefit or could benefit from going plant-based?
I do. However, I think within every single diet, you have to be somewhat educated, because clearly if you're a vegan, you are missing some things like B12. It's very hard to get B12 in the diet if you're not eating animal proteins. And protein in general can be low if you're vegan, and you're not eating enough of that. So in every diet, there is some, I guess, responsibility to do your research and make sure you're consuming the proper nutrients and the proper vitamins and minerals to stay healthy in those dieting guidelines. So, and that goes with everything. So I think everybody can benefit as long as they're also educating themselves on what they need. Because obviously if you just cut out a whole bunch of stuff and you're like, I'm plant-based, but you're, not getting the proper nutrients you might need, or you're deficient in something, that can cause an issue. So, but then again, the SAD diet, or the standard American diet, that causes many issues in terms of getting any nutrients, because it's a lot of processed food and a lot of the wrong foods. So I do think the plant-based diet is a much healthier diet than the majority are implementing. But again, it all goes back to education.
Yeah, definitely. The SAD diet, I've never heard that been labeled to the American diet before.
Yeah, standard American diet is the SAD diet, which is ironic.
It is. Okay, let's see. How do you see nutrition and training changing in the future?
Well, I do think we're in the midst of a big shift towards plant-based. I do see that like veganism is becoming a bigger thing, and plant-based diets in general are like more well known. And I think it's neat to see people in the bodybuilding realm implementing plant-based diets and vegan diets, and getting on stage and showcasing that you can retain muscle and you can be lean without animal protein. So I think that's cool to see. And I think we're right in the middle of that big shift towards that. So yeah, I mean, I do see it becoming more of a popular diet, just because I do think it has a lot of health benefit. As people become more educated, and even on the environmental factors and how, animal agriculture is kind of destroying our environment, and the ethical factors behind animal slaughtering and that sort of thing. I think the more people are getting educated, the more we're seeing that shift. So I do see it continuing to go that way. Or at least, maybe not so much, even if it's not vegan, a more ethical approach to consuming the animal proteins you're consuming. I think people are starting to catch on to like being a little bit more aware of the protein sources and the differences between, wild caught versus farmed fish and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, just to even diminish the average American's consumption of meat would be drastic for our environment, for everything.
Yeah, completely.
But I don't think a lot of those plant-based bodybuilders not a lot of people are seeing them just yet. So a lot of people aren't realizing that you can build substantial muscle. I was shocked by some of the plant-based bodybuilders I saw, and how just ripped they were. I didn't think it would get that way either.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries out now, focusing on that, and I think it's pretty cool to see that it is possible, because I think people have kind of had like a preconceived idea that like you can't get lean, or you can't have muscle mass being vegan, but there's more and more people in that realm proving that's not true. So yeah, it's really cool.
Definitely. And let's see. So what are some resources that helped you along the way when you were like coming along? I know there's probably a ton, but when it just comes to maybe reverse dieting and like getting out of that mindset, or just where you were when you came out of training?
Yeah, well, I think the first like resource that I was utilizing in terms of starting to understand myself from an internal perspective was I worked with a doctor he was a close friend of ours. He actually was a client of my husband's, and he could run labs and do all that sort of thing. And so we went to meet him, and he, did my blood work. This was like at the height of my health issues. So like stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Like I was a mess, and I knew it because I'd been competing for 3 years. And I told him, I was like, I want to have kids, and I want to figure this out and like get healthy. And so he was a really good resource for me, because he was a close friend that, I still talk to him today. And he just had a way of explaining things with hormones, and he's not an endocrinologist, but he's a doctor, and he understands. I mean, honestly, I feel like he kind of understands things better than the endocrinologist I worked with years later. But he just was such a great resource for me, because he had a lot of the education I didn't have. But he helped me learn my body from a hormonal perspective, and where, things were shifting and what was happening and what I could do to improve that. And so he was probably like my first, I guess, real good resource that I leaned on in terms of learning about hormones and homeostasis and trying to get my body back to that. And then, you know, I kind of dove into it with like following holistic doctors and functional medicine doctors, like on, whether it was Instagram or YouTube or podcasts. You know, I was just trying to learn and absorb as much as I could. There's a podcast called Heal Thyself by Dr. G. It's a great podcast. I follow him on Instagram as well. And, you know, just really trying to educate myself from a different perspective when it came to internal health. So I would say those, you know, just, I guess that's kind of broad, but functional medicine doctors, people who understood health from, you know, the hormonal standpoint, really helped me. Lindsay Wells, she's another one. She is I believe she's a nurse practitioner, but she owns her own practice. And she's very much into functional medicine. And her and I, actually, funny story, she competed against me in 12, I think, or 13. She competed against me at one of the largest regional shows in the nation. And we were both up for the overall. She beat me, and that's how we met. But she ended up years later she went pro in bikini bodybuilding and got out of the sport, and, you know, is very much into functional medicine now. And her and I have stayed in touch this whole time because we have kind of similar stories.
Yeah.
And she's very educated, and she's a great resource for me too. If I just have questions, you know, I can text her and talk to her, which makes it super easy because she's kind of like right there at my fingertips, and she has more of the hands-on experience that I don't have because I don't work in a clinical setting, obviously, and I don't work with patients. So I learn a lot though from the people who do, because they have, you know, that experience that I don't have, but I have a lot of my own experience and a lot of experience through working with clients. So it's just kind of like a broad realm of absorbing knowledge and education, I guess.
Yeah, just being resourceful and just talking.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Let's see. And so do you think speaking with the endocrinologists and the functional medicine doctors in the beginning, that hormone rebalancing, how long do you think that took for you to kind of?
Oh gosh, years. So that's the thing. Everyone wants like a quick, you know, speedy recovery, a speedy process. And that's kind of the American way. We want everything fast and quick and easy. But when it comes to hormones, it's never fast and quick and easy, especially if you've been in extremes for years. You better expect to come, you know, to heal for years, because, you know, if you swing the pendulum one way, it's going to swing back the other way. So I would honestly say, because I continued to be in the career I'm in, and I had a lot of pressure with like photo shoots and getting ready for things that involved me being lean, it was almost impossible for me to fully heal until I took myself out of that. And really that didn't happen until I got pregnant, because I was forced to, which I kind of knew that was going to happen. And I knew going into it, like, this is my time to really heal, because I don't have to be lean for anything. And I need to take this time to just like breathe and take a break and really focus on my health. And not only for my baby, obviously, but I knew for my health, I wanted to come out of my pregnancy being in a better position than I went into it. And so I definitely had done some healing prior to getting pregnant. And I think that's why I was even able to. However, I don't think I fully recovered from my years of extremes until after I had my baby, and I came out of postpartum. And I felt like my body was back to like pre-competing days. And because I was like, oh my gosh, I can eat so much food and stay lean, and my metabolism was working and I feel good. And like, you know, of course you're tired as a new mom, but I felt like my body was finally responsive to things it wasn't responsive to for years prior because of the extremes.
That's interesting. You know, that's not a lot. Like, I know some mothers like don't have that experience out of pregnancy. They're usually.
Yeah, I think though a big part of that is I was so strategic through my pregnancy with healing. You know, and a lot of people, you know, while they're pregnant, they, you know, they do feel insecure and they do try to keep up with their fitness, which is great. I mean, I'm not saying don't keep up with your fitness while you're pregnant. But for me personally, like, I literally, like, I mean, my workouts were consisting of like long walks outside. And, you know, if I felt tired, I was not pushing my body. I was sleeping, I was resting. I was really focusing on healing myself and taking that downtime, and eating a lot of food, a lot of healthy food, but a lot of food, so that like my metabolism was, you know, doing well. I wasn't like, I didn't have the urge to binge eat because I had no restrictions, and I was healing myself mentally, but also physically. And I wasn't restricting at all. If I felt hungry, if I wanted a ton of fruit, I was eating that. You know, in the past, I had this weird conception that like fruit has sugar and, you know, eating a whole bunch of it's bad. And I really tried to like get myself out of that mindset with my pregnancy and be like, no, this has nutrients. If I'm craving it, I'm craving it for a reason. If I want a lot of it, that's fine. You know, I'm pregnant, and yeah, I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but I'm also going to let myself heal both mentally and physically. And so I just think I really utilized my pregnancy as a healing journey for myself. And I think that really benefited me on the other side. I just, you know, hormonally, mentally, physically, I just came out of it like a whole new person. So I think some people don't go into their pregnancy with that mindset, but I did. So I think that just really helped.
Yeah, definitely to use that 9 months to heal yourself, to make yourself better from the inside out. I think anybody going into it with that mindset, that would be nice coming out on the other side, and you would make a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. This one, I love hearing the answers to this one. Who has been most influential to you in building your business and all the stuff that you've developed?
I mean, I don't think I can name one person, but the person I guess who comes to mind right away is Lori Harder. I'm not sure if you follow her, but she actually, funny story, because my fitness career, I remember when I decided to do my first show, I walked into my brother's personal training studio because he was training me for my show. And I had I think it was an Oxygen magazine. It was one of the fitness magazines, big ones at the time. And there was a woman on it, and I told him, I said, I want to look like her. And she, you know, she was brunette, and I was brunette at the time. And he's like, you actually kind of look like her, and you have a similar physique. So he's like, that's a very realistic goal for you. And I'm like, sweet. And so that woman ended up being Lori Harder, and she kind of became like my fitness idol along the way. And she was very much into competing back in the day, and she was very successful. And then fast forward like 3 years later, I went to nationals, and my very first national show, I apologize for the dogs. I'm sorry. My very first national show, I didn't do well, and I was like devastated because I was used to winning everything, and I just did not do how I was expecting to do. And so my fiance at the time, I was engaged prior to Brandon, he actually reached out to Lori Harder because he knew she was my fitness idol. And he was like, you know, she didn't do well, and like, could you offer her some words of encouragement? And Lori actually ended up texting me, and I was like, oh my God, Lori texted, you know, like so blown away that this like fitness icon would text me, because at the time I didn't have what I have now and the following and everything else. And she really made an impact on me. Like, you know, she gave me some encouraging words and said like she failed so many times before she ever made it, and not give up, and all that. And so over the years, I stayed in touch with her, you know, through social media and everything else. And then I actually ended up on my baby moon in 2000, what was that, 16. I ended up meeting her. My husband and I went to dinner with her and her husband in Beverly Hills. And so, yeah, and so it was really cool because I'm like, gosh, this is nuts. Like, years in the making. I got to meet Lori, and she hasn't competed in years, and she very much has created more. She's an entrepreneur, and she has businesses, and she very much has created something, you know, financially amazing for her and her husband. And I really looked up to kind of her path, and I got some valuable advice from her while I was there. And so I feel like she probably along the way like made the biggest impact on me. And I went to school for economics and finance, so fitness was kind of random, I guess you could say. And so I knew that I wanted something far beyond just fitness. Like, I wanted to create something and own something, and having a financial background, that was important to me. So I was kind of, I feel like I was kind of already on that path, but Lori helped me be inspired, I guess.
Oh, I'm going to have to look her up, Lori Harder. Okay.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you probably a question that I think I may know, but I think I know it just because I follow you, but not other people may know. Let's see. What is your favorite meal?
Oh, geez. If you might know more than me. I just love food. Oh my gosh. Um, my favorite. See, that's hard because I love flavor and I love food. Like okay, I absolutely love oatmeal, which is funny. I just love it. My husband does too, so we're both like oatmeal fanatics. I could eat it for like 3 meals a day, which is so odd, but I do. And then I just love like vibrant, healthy vegetables and like huge salads with lots of flavor and like walnuts and all kinds of different crunch, and I don't know, I like so much variety in my diet. Like I'm huge on variety. And I also love sweets though. Like people probably don't know that about me, but I do. I love sweets, but like vegan pastries and donuts and brownies. When I go back to Oregon, they have the best vegan pastries, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, because you can't find that here. But yeah, I don't know if I have like one favorite meal. I don't know. What would you say from watching me?
What it was oatmeal because I always
Okay,
always eating oatmeal.
yeah, I do. I love oatmeal. I don't know. I mean, it's just
I've had
something
it
that
before. You've eaten it before. Do you put honey on
yeah.
it, or is it just peanut butter and blueberries and protein?
So peanut butter and blueberries, and then I mix protein powder in it. So yeah.
It's tasty. It is. It's really good. But I was like, I think she likes oatmeal.
Well, you got it. But yeah, I like a variety for sure.
I'll ask you one more question, maybe two more. Let's see what you say to this one. What's the best compliment you ever received?
Oh, I actually just made a post kind of about this on Instagram, and it's kind of funny that you asked it because I randomly thought about this the other day.
I didn't even see it.
Yeah, while I was prepping, which is kind of, I'll tell you the backstory, but while I was prepping years ago, I had this man who actually, he knew my brothers and he was kind of an acquaintance, but online he said, you have the mental strength of a Super Saiyan. And I don't know if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z, but I actually had watched it. So I laughed because I was like, I know what he's saying, but some people might not. And my brothers were big Dragon Ball Z fans. So as the only girl in our family, I watched it. And so I laughed because it's a cartoon and it's very much like more male based, but it was more of a compliment based off my mental strength than physical. And I was so used to getting so many physical compliments that, it was kind of cool because I'm like, you know what? Like I do have crazy mental strength, and that's why I was in the position I was in with dieting and why I could get my body to the extreme leanness I could, was because it's all mental. Like at a certain point, it's like, it is not physical. It is 100% mental. And I kind of took that compliment and I was like, okay, if I'm mentally strong enough to literally be so hungry, I feel like I'm going to die and continue, because obviously that was before I did things very healthy. It's kind of like, what else can I do in my life? Because I have the mental strength that some people never tap into. And so that compliment, for whatever reason, stuck with me. And it kind of like, I guess, I thought about it through other challenges. I'm so sorry. Through other challenges in my life, I thought about that a lot. And when it came to growing my business or whatever it was, I always went back to that. Like, I have the mental strength to do this sort of thing. I'm so sorry about the
It's okay. You know what's funny? My dog is growling because your dogs are barking. Because he hears them barking.
I don't even know what they're barking at, but
okay. We'll do one more, and I don't know if this one will apply to you. What are some common myths or misconceptions about training or nutrition that you've encountered? Is there anything?
Yeah, actually, that's a good one. I think the calorie debate is something that like I'm passionate about, because along the way with my fitness journey, I went from like the bro diet and extremes and chicken and rice and everything else is off limits sort of thing, to learning macronutrients and flexible dieting and being able to fit more things in my macros. And I kind of like came full circle with that, because I think a lot of people who track macros and they practice flexible dieting, and if it fits your macros, they are told and taught that, you know, it doesn't matter what the carb source is from. A carb is carb, a protein is protein, a fat is a fat. And to an extent, that can be true. However, it grinds my gears that like the macro dieting mindset has gone to such an extreme now that people completely forget about the micronutrients and the fact that like at the end of the day, processed food is not good for you. Like no matter who you are, it is not good for you. It is, you know, if it's made in a lab and sits on a shelf for 3 years, you're not going to argue with me that those 300 calories are the same 300 calories as, you know, eating from the earth. And so I think that's a huge misconception, and people really like go full force with, well, it fits my macros, so I'm going to eat McDonald's every day. And if you're coming out of like an eating disorder or something like that, and you have to do that, I get that. Like it's part of the process because you're mentally needing to get away from the constraints of, you know, black and white food mentality. However, on the other side of that, you know, eventually, if you're not in that mindset type of dieting, you need to start understanding that like internal health comes from what you put in your mouth, and it's not just about what you can fit in your macros. And it, you know, there's so much more to it, and you know, nutrients and micronutrients and, you know, your sugar intake and your fiber intake and all those things are so important, and people just, they're missing that. And you know, like I said, sometimes it's just part of the process. Sometimes people have to go through that to get kind of to the other side. And that's at least what happened to me. Like I had to play with flexible dieting to get out of my mental food restraints. And then I learned through functional health and functional medicine the importance of nutrition from like a whole foods, plant-based diet perspective. And now I guess you could say I almost eat more of the bro diet that I started with. However, I don't have the mental, I guess, black and white mentality around it. And I've just learned so much about plant-based food that like, I know how healthy it is and how healing it can be. And so there's just that calorie debate, like a calorie is a calorie. And I completely disagree with that. Not all calories are created equal. And, you know, in the short term, you could probably eat the same 300 calories from McDonald's as you could from, you know, a plant-based meal. But what does it do in the long term? And I think that's what everybody's missing. It's like, oh, I can lose weight. Well, yeah, you can in the next 6 to 8 weeks. But let's talk about like 9 months later. Do you have, you know, thyroid issues? Is your hair falling out because you're missing nutrients? Like what's happening down the road? And that's what everybody's missing. It's like nobody's looking at the long term and what they're doing internally. They're all just looking for like quick results now.
Yeah, definitely. I think I don't know if I've heard that many people talk about micronutrients.
Well, that's exactly it. They're not, and that's unfortunate because that's a huge, you know, I think people need to educate themselves on micronutrients just as much as macronutrients, and you know, especially fiber intake. Like I cannot believe the little amount of fiber people eat, and water. Like 90% of the world's walking around dehydrated, and it's just like shocking to me. I'm like, drink more water, you know. It's just like that should be one of the foundations of our health is, you know, consuming enough water. And it just seems like people are living on Diet Coke and, you know, all these other things, and can't.
Somebody that does that. Actually, I met him just like a little bit ago, but he only drinks, I think, something like a Coke or energy drinks.
Oh geez. Yeah, I don't know. I just when it comes to, I guess, true health and, you know, holistic health and living that lifestyle, you know, you can argue disease and cancer, you know, is going up. And for myself and my family, all I know is that living this lifestyle, you know, you're hedging your risk against those risk factors.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. And that's something that, like, you know, I think people, sometimes you have to grow into that, you know, as you get older and realize how important health is. But people might make fun of you for your choices, but at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I'm going to pray and hope that nobody in my family gets, a disease that kills them, or cancer, or something that is devastating, that, you would do anything to take back your choices prior, but you can't, you know what I mean? So that's just where I'm at with why I live the way I do. And, I don't want to give my family or myself any reason to be in that position.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like the good mindset and just being honest and eating well, that whole combination.
Exactly. It's all about balance. Not everybody can live the way I live without feeling restricted. I don't at all. It's just, to me, it's easy and it's a lifestyle. But again, it took years for me to get to that point, and I kind of had to like go at my own pace and on my own journey.
Yeah.
It wasn't just an overnight thing. So, some people might not be there yet, and it might just be, down the road for them, which is fine. But as long as we keep educating ourselves and continuing to strive to do what's best for us and our family, I think that's all you can do,
Yes. All right. This has been great. I'm so excited that I had you on. I know we tried for a few times.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we made it. So thank you.